Shalom and welcome again to Seekers of Meaning, the podcast arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm Rabbi Richard Address, your host and the founder of Jewish Sacred Aging. We thank you for joining us. As you know, these podcasts are designed to explore issues related to our own aging and the implications of longevity for our families, ourselves, and our community. And we welcome your comments at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com. Catherine Fischer is our guest on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning. And with Catherine, we want to explore her new venture. And also, as we did last week, this fascinating journey that so many of our generation are taking of saying, thank you very much to what I've been doing for all these years, but now I have a different calling. So first of all, Catherine, you are the founder and head of Sacred Practices, correct? Sacred Practice is the name of this new venture and your new calling. First of all, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome. Full disclosure, I've known Catherine for a while, and we live in the same area here in the greater Philadelphia area. Let's get right to it. What is Sacred Practice, Catherine?
Sacred Practice is taking our tradition and implementing it into our everyday lives and work.
You write on your website, and let's get that out of the way right away. Sacredpractice.com, .org, .net, what?
.com. Sacred-practice.com.
Sacred-practice.com, in which you write, Sacred Practice is designed to help to bring the transformational power of Judaism into all aspects of synagogue life. What does that mean? And what does that mean, especially in this tremendous age of transition that we're in?
You know, there's many ways that we get distracted in our lives. And Judaism offers us this incredible gift of our tradition in many forms. And when we just go back to our tradition, go back to the essence of our Judaism, it always has wisdom to give us what we need in any present moment. I mean, that's the gist of it. And I've applied that in my career, specifically, over the last 20 years. And I always found that when I got distracted by the shiny new thing, then I was off track. And if I just sort of stuck with the path that was given to me, this beautiful gift, that it always led me well, and the work thrived. So I applied it to some really, some of the challenging situations that one encounters in synagogue life. I oversaw engagement, most recently at Congregation Road to Shalom in Philadelphia, and I was supported by incredible clergy to really have autonomy over applying my perspectives on membership programming and philanthropy. And it just reaped incredible rewards and many surprises along the way that I never would have predicted.
So the gift you talk about, I want to ask you about that and unpack that a little bit. You refer to a couple of times this tremendous gift that the tradition has. What's that gift? What is that gift to you, to Catherine?
So I will share that I converted to Judaism 35 plus years ago, and it has completely transformed my life. And it has been the greatest gift to me. And so I know the transformational power of this tradition. And when I say that, I mean it in the broadest possible context. I mean it in terms of Torah and Torah study and deep study, but also any kind of Jewish study. And I also mean it in terms of community, the power of community, and in terms of social justice, and acts of loving kindness. So when there's certain texts that really stand out to me that have guided me over the years, I think some people have that. I always have, for instance, from Genesis, God was in this place and I did not know it. That has guided me and inspired me in all kinds of situations. And so when I apply the best of our text and what resonates for me into various situations, it's the rest unfolds beautifully.
So, and I understand that the idea of looking at text and having the text like the blessing for Thursday of La Asok B'Divrei Torah, as my best friend Rabbi Jakovsky, all of us Shalom, used to teach, that word La Asok, to let the text speak to you. So, in essence, it's also speaking. If the text is speaking to you, then the active listening to that text is part of this ability to transform a person, and by definition, for what you're doing with sacred practice, transform an institution.
Yes.
What But what was the? This is one of the things that also fascinates me. What was the tipping point or the motivating factor? You left a very secure position, everything was, and to make this leap, like Genesis 12, of saying, I'm gonna leap. I want to do this. I want to offer. Was it an aha moment on Broad Street? Was it when you were stuck in traffic on the bridge, or was it something gradual that just say, oh, you say yes, it's time. It's now time. What was that thing that motivated you to do this?
It was really hard to leave. When I say I loved my job, I mean that wholeheartedly. And I love the community there. And I was so supported by the clergy there to do the work the way I wanted to do it. But there came a point, I think, as I aged, I'm approaching my mid-60s, that I had this sort of, I guess some would say, the still small voice inside me that was, it's a very small voice. It's a very shy voice. But it gnaws there. It's always there. And it gnaws at me. And if I don't pay attention to it, it's unsettling to me. So I think I was right before my birthday 3 years ago. And my son had just told us that he and his wife were expecting their first child. And so there were a lot of things coming together personally and professionally for me that I thought, I need to listen to what's going on inside. And it was hard because I was really struggling with the reality of my job versus what I was feeling inside me. And I really was sitting in services one Friday night and I said, I need to make a change. And I gave plenty of notice, and I really tried to, tuck things in before I left, so I would leave Rhoda Shalom secure. And then I didn't know what I was going to do.
Right.
I didn't have a plan. And actually, the pandemic hit the next day. We were in lockdown the next day. So my plans for traveling to go up to see my son and my daughter all were canceled. And I had this very unsettling time, frankly. I was really in that midbar space, in that liminal space of not knowing where I was going. I immersed myself in Jewish study, and I was so happy in that. I hadn't really done my own study like that in a long time. So I immersed myself in that, and I continue to do that. But then I started to, with the mentorship of Rabbi Larry Hoffman, who said, you should be writing more about what you did and how you did it. I was writing a lot during the last 2 years. And it was actually Rabbi Richard Address who said, why not create a website? And, it was mentors like you, Rabbi Hoffman, and others who guided me in this. I definitely need the support of community. I have my own inspiration, I have my own voice, but I do need the support of community every step along the way in this. And it's just served me well. And this does feel scary, and it does feel brave. But I figure, listen, I put something out into the world that I hope will support our congregations and support the good work that our Jewish professionals and lay leaders are doing. It's the thing I care most passionately about. And anything I can do to support our synagogues, I'm here to do.
Well, first of all, thank you for the plug. And Dr. Hoffman is going to be a guest up on one of our upcoming podcasts as well, which I'm actually very, very much looking forward to, because I've known him for a long, 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 long time. In fact, he was my thesis advisor for my doctorate. Um, it's just fascinating because so many of the people who have done what you've done have a very, very similar story. They it's this they the universe seems to be sending them messages. They come to a point, not unusual, either around a birthday or a significant moment, where all of a sudden they start to receive those messages, and it finds a place in their soul, and they reach that border. They're saying, okay, am I going to take this leap, or am I going to say, no, I really would like to do it, but I can't afford spiritually, psychologically, emotionally to take that leap, but it would be lovely if. And then some people like you do, and they take that leap. And it takes a tremendous amount of courage, and it takes an amount of, really a word we don't use enough. It takes a tremendous amount of faith in oneself, and faith, I think, in the grand scheme of the universe, that you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And so you started sacred practice. The goal of sacred practice is to really help transform synagogues. Am I correct in that statement?
Mhm. I would say that I think synagogues are transformative places right now. They have the potential to be.
Oh, that's
But
that's
what I am hoping that sacred practice offers is a way to ensure alignment with that greater purpose throughout the entire enterprise. So, for instance, the clergy are the leaders of the spiritual aspects of the synagogue. But I want to empower everybody with the spiritual aspect of their job. So the front office staff should be empowered to understand the importance of that job in a spiritual way as well as the people who create our sacred spaces. So empowering and infusing alignment into all those nooks and crannies of the synagogue is as important, because if it's not, it's felt right away.
so. Let's play this out. Um, I'm a synagogue leader. We're at a point, especially right now, with such tremendous change within the Jewish community. Many synagogues are struggling. Um, we know that the world has significantly changed as a result of this pandemic. We're never going to go back to January of 2020 unless we want to go out of business. But if we don't, and we want to continue to grow, we're going to have to emerge, revision, transform, adapt, and innovate. Here you are, Catherine Fischer, the founder, director of Sacred Practice. I hear about you and say, well, let's try to have a conversation. Hello, Catherine. What can you offer my synagogue? Um, we really know that we have to make some changes. We don't even know what questions to ask. Talk to me, Catherine.
So I would say, I think a lot of people focus on technology as being one of the major differences that's happened since March 2020 or January,
Whatever.
2020. The human need for community and meaning and purpose remains steady. And so I think synagogues have this incredible opportunity to think about how they're offering that to people. And so whether you're thinking about virtual options, you have to remember that people are people at the end of the day, and they still need that personal connection. So the higher purpose of a synagogue is where we start with this conversation. What is your higher purpose? What is the vision of your congregation? And then how do we apply that principle into everything we do? And I have, this was how I worked for 20 years. So I have lots of very concrete examples of how it can be translated. I often, you're a rabbi, I'm not a rabbi, but I often thought of it as midrash. Here's text. How do I interpret this text for this particular situation that I'm in right now in the synagogue work that I do? If I have to make a difficult phone call to a member, if I have to enter data into the database, right? Sort of the mundane or the difficult, how do I infuse wisdom into that? What is the bigger purpose of that? How do I open my heart to the opportunity that's right here? How do I become awake?
Right. So in other words, part of what you're trying to do within congregation is to see every act, whether it's opening the door or doing a funeral, as relating to something transcendent. Would I be correct in saying it that way? Okay. And you through your work now, through the website and your organization, Sacred Practice, you've developed tools, skills, exercises, modalities to help clergy and lay leadership, correct? Both revision.
Yeah, I would just clarify, say that clergy really have this on their minds all the time, but clergies are the leaders of the congregations as well. I mean, it's different in different congregations, but the president, the executive director, and the clergy are sort of that three-legged stool sometimes. And they're all aware of the higher purpose of the institution usually. But it's bringing it into everything that the synagogue does and into all positions. At Rosh Shalom, we had building services. We had people that created our sacred spaces. And so lifting them up into that holy conversation. In preparation for launching Sacred Practice, I had many conversations with people in building services and front office staff, as well as executive directors. And it was fascinating to find out how they bring their spiritual tradition into their work.
Mm-hmm.
And so often we think, okay, that person is entrenched in something that is a list of many details. And we don't often think about the opportunity of raising up that work. The importance of creating sacred space is right up there.
Let me give you a practical, I'm sure you've had this conversation. Yeah, Catherine, that's wonderful. We want to revision. We want to do all these things. We love our rabbi, and everybody is happy. And but we're losing members. We can't make budget. We're afraid our clergy are going to leave. We're not a big congregation. We're 280 families. We have one rabbi, part-time educator, and a secretary, administrative assistant in the office, and we're struggling. We'd love to talk about the grand, wonderful things, but we just got to be able to make it through the year. Talk to me how we do that.
Yeah. So Sacred Practice isn't a silver bullet. It's not going to fix a problem that has needs immediate solution. This is a longer term process. But I would venture to say that because I understand the human need for meaning, purpose, and connection, that there is nothing irrelevant about our synagogues. I think they're the most relevant places we have. The question is, how do we execute meaning, purpose, and connection? How do those people feel when they come into that space. And, you know, I feel like if we're successful in our bigger goal, in our sacred purpose, our institutions are going to thrive. So, you know, there was sort of an inconsistency during COVID. There were some Jewish organizations that really caught on to what do people need right now? How do we bring the wisdom of our tradition and actualize it at this really stressful moment? And they did it, and they're thriving. They're bringing in more money than they ever knew. They have more people. And so it just proves over and over again that this is relevant, this matters, and there's nothing about it that doesn't have the potential to thrive.
Let me ask you something about meaning, because you spent a lot of time, and actually you wrote something for us about baby boomers last November, whatever last year was, 2021. I've lost track of time in the pandemic. And you spent a lot of time at Rhoda at RS in Philadelphia, and you wrote about engaging boomers, and that's a predominant demographic for Jewish sacred aging. Talk to me about, you know, how you brought what you're talking, the intentionality, the gift to that program at RS specifically for boomers. What did you do there? What happened there?
Yeah. So there's a theme in just about everything I do, and the theme is listening. If I had to boil down everything I do, it comes down to listening. And when I first started at Rhoda Shalom, which was back in 2008, my job description, it changed over the course of my time there 4 times, but it initially started.
That's not unusual.
They weren't sure what to call me, but
that's not unusual. It's a Jewish organization.
I know. Well, at the time, it was director of membership and programming, and so I was answering the phone. When people were calling and they were interested in connecting with the synagogue, interested in membership, I was the person who answered the phone. And it was through the conversations I had with prospective members, as well as veteran members, people who had been members for many, many years, that we created our first boomer engagement opportunity, which was called Boomers in Transition. Actually, it started out as an empty nest program because there was a congregant who said, my last child went off to college and I'm feeling like I need community. And just then I had a conversation with a prospective member who said, I'm a psychologist and I'm interested in being part of the community, but I'd really like to be active. I'd like to share my skill set. And I said, well, and I just put these 2 things together. And what was started out as a 4-session just gathering to talk about this phase of empty nesthood turned into a 7-year ongoing gathering place for us to have conversations about aging and about the various transitions that happen in the course of baby boomers' lives.
So you talk about listening. You know, I would imagine when you sit in synagogue and they say the Shema and they say, "Hear, O Israel," you probably say, no. It's basically, "Listen, O Israel, don't hear." So with that in mind, and that's a midrash that you can use, and probably I will as well. But you also, on this idea of active listening, you just finished teaching a class in January, a couple of months ago, to the congregation in Southern New Jersey on active listening. And to me, that's your theme. Okay. So when you sat down with this group of 30, 40 people on the Zoom machine and on active, what was that like? What was the conversation about? What were you picking up, and what were you listening for, and what did you hear?
Yeah. So listening has been the foundation, as you said, of everything I do. And I was trying to think about, in this sacred practice work, how can I offer a class around listening and the importance of listening in Judaism and this work? Mm-hmm. And so I put together 3 sessions, and it could be a year-long class. But I put together 3 sessions. The first one was on listening to the still small voice within. The second one was on listening to the other. And the third was listening to everything that is around us. And I wasn't sure how it was going to go over, frankly. And it was hard for me to sort of figure out, how am I listening? How am I absorbing what I'm seeing in these little squares? And I'm still processing that, frankly. I mean, I asked for feedback. I talked to people in between sessions to say what's resonating, what should I tweak. So I was a student in this class as well as a facilitator. And that's how I generally work, is that, I get my, a lot of my energy from teaching by seeing who's responding. And so I opened up many channels for conversations during the class and in between the classes. And I think it resonated for a lot of people, I came away having learned, I think, more than they did, but so I'm tweaking it. And I had some fascinating realizations in the process of teaching that class.
Really? For example, give me one.
Oh my gosh. I appreciate the different learning styles in the class, sort of the very rational thinker versus the more spiritual learner. And just sort of, what people absorb, how they need information presented. I was also teaching at the time where we just started Exodus. And so I brought in text. And in the beginning of Exodus, we read that the Israelites could not hear the voice of Moses. They could certainly not hear the voice of God either. And by the end of the class, we were at Sinai, where the Israelites could hear. They were open. They were able to hear God's voice. They were able to hear Moses' voice. So we looked at what happened between that moment in the beginning of Exodus to the moment at Sinai. And we tracked it. And we found wisdom in their journey, crossing the Red Sea, when they celebrate on the other side, where Miriam is dancing with tambourines, the women are dancing and everyone is singing. Like, imagine that. Everyone's constricted, they can't breathe on the other side, and now they're singing and dancing on the other side. And so there's just this beautiful story around, how do we open up? How do we listen? How do we breathe? It was pretty powerful.
In your journey, Catherine, how have you listened to God's still small voice? And how are you listening to it now?
I think I've always been listening. And people say when you convert to Judaism that, you don't really look before, you look from the point of conversion on. And I've always challenged that perspective, because my Jewish life started as soon as I could. I was a being. That's what I believe. And I've always followed my heart, frankly. I always followed, I was raised to sort of pay attention to my heart, and to pay attention to what I was passionate about. And so I've had a very blessed career. I've had 2 careers, both of which were incredibly meaningful and powerful for me. And I raised my children the same way. And, what I used to call passion, I now call the still small voice. So I have different language for it, but it's always guided me.
In your work now, in the 3rd chapter of your life, this 3rd career, sacred practice, what do you want to have? What do you want to give? What's the gift that you want to give to synagogue?
Yeah. It's interesting that you're saying it that way, because when I created the website, I said, even if nobody wants to work with me on it, I'm still really glad I did it. I feel like because of the incredible gift Judaism has given me in my life, I always feel indebted. I just want to give back. And this website is my gift to the Jewish community. It is what I have learned. It is my best. And if I can help another congregation or another person in their work and connect, it's like if you save a life, you've changed the world, you've saved the world. I really feel that way. So I really, I was asked multiple times in my career, can you write how you do things? If I was presenting at the biennial or teaching a workshop, it was often people that wanted more. I would mentor people. And so I felt like to just sort of leave and not give something that would endure was a lost opportunity. And this is, one perspective. It's not the answer. I don't even know that it's the right answer for everybody, It's what worked for me, and I felt this obligation to be able to put words to it and send it out into the world.
So once again, if a congregation or lay leader or clergy person, rabbi, cantor, educator, executive director, et cetera, if they would like to explore some of these ideas with you and bring sacred practice into their realm, how do they do that? What's the contact information?
So they can go to my website, and my contact information is everywhere on that website. I think it's easiest to go to the website. So the website is www.sacred-practice.com. Practice
singular.
Yes.
Catherine Fischer, this has been a treat. And again, I admire you and congratulate you on your leap of faith. I look forward to working with you some more, and hopefully you'll do some more stuff with our work, since a lot of your experience dovetails with our demographic as well. So first of all, thank you very much again for joining us. Much luck, hatzlacha with sacred practice, sacred-practice.com. Keep in touch. We'll talk to you later. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Just stay safe and stay healthy. Okay? My pleasure. To all of you, thank you again for joining us on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the TV show and podcast of Jewish Sacred Aging. We welcome your comments. Again, you can email me at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com. And if you'd like to make a donation, tax-free, of course, to help support our work at Jewish Sacred Aging and these podcasts, go to the website, jewishsacredaging.com, scroll down to the conveniently located donate button, click on that, and just follow the prompt. Seekers of Meaning is produced at the Broadcast Center of Lubeck and Media Companies here in gorgeous, beautiful Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And we thank our producer, Steve Lubeck. Again, thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. We look forward to seeing you on our next Seekers of Meaning TV show and podcast. In the meantime, shalom, stay safe, everybody. Stay healthy. Take care.